now past 4 o'clock for me in Canada, which means 5 o'clock, many of you in South America, and very, very late for Simona. So I will just say hello to everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this panel. I will just briefly say thank you to Rodrigo Soto-Lagos and Miguel, who both have accepted to organize this panel in collaboration with ISSA, and who very graciously were our contact people with ALESDE and CLACSO. So as you know, today the panel, the virtual panel, is in collaboration with ALESDE and CLACSO. So I want to again thank Rodrigo, Miguel, and also thank you very much to ALESDE and CLACSO for collaborating with us for the panel. Now, there Miguel has just arrived. Miguel Corneo was the other co-organizer with Rodrigo. So for all the participants who are not speaking in the panel today, you will see that you are not able to enable your microphone. This is because it's not our first ISSA panel, and since we have made them free, and we are also allowing all kinds of people to join us, we have had a few problems at a previous panel with some called Zoom bombers. So anyway, only the panel speakers will be allowed to speak, and all participants who want to make a comment or ask a question are asked to send it in the chat, and then in due time our moderators will go to your comments and questions. So on this note, I will donner la parole. I'm not sure how we say that in Spanish or Portuguese. I think I've even lost it in English. I will let Rosa and Rolando, our two moderators, take over.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much, Christine. It's a pleasure to be sharing this panel, and thank you very much to our ALESDE friends who made it possible, and to our ISSA friends as well. So it's a pleasure to be sharing this with Rolando Dromundo. So I will start presenting the first speaker, and then that's the way we will keep going, okay? I just want to make the participants know, for those of you who are not, doesn't feel like asking question in English, please, you can write the questions in there in Spanish in the chat, or in French, because Christine can help us. So you can write it in there. So, and we can, at the end of the sessions, once the 4 speakers finish, then we can answer. I mean, they will answer, okay? So it's a pleasure to see you all through the distance. So let's start with our first speaker, and thank you very much for being here. So it's Renato Marquez. He is a senior lecturer at the School of Physical Education and Sport of Ribeirão Preto from the University of Sao Paulo, Brazil. He did his master and doctoral at the Faculty of Physical Education, University of Campinas, and his postdoc in sociology of sport at the Department of Physical Education from the University of Paraná. He is the General Secretary of the Latin American Association for Sociocultural Studies of Sport, ALESDE, and his research focused on the sociological approach to understanding athletes' career development, and he teaches sociology of sport and pedagogy. So, Renato, the floor is yours.
Actually, Renato, I am sorry. There is a very important message I was supposed to say before we started. This meeting is recorded, and so everyone should know that we are recording this meeting. So if you continue to participate with us, you agree for the recording, you are welcome to leave your camera off as we are recording this panel, and it will then be accessible on our ISSA YouTube channel that has been created by Parisa Safai, the General Secretary for ISSA. Sorry for the interruption. Renato, it's now yours.
Thank you, Christine, and thank you, Rosa, for the invitation. Thank you, Rodrigo and Miguel for the invitation. It's a pleasure to share with you this panel. It's a pleasure to contribute for the discussion about Latin American sport in COVID-19 times. My speech is titled Physical Exercise and Sport in Times of COVID-19 Pandemic in Brazil, a reflection on disposition for practice and social distinction. This speech is based in a recently published article that I wrote in partnership with Paul Mateu from University of Barcelona, related to physical exercise in times of social isolation, when we considered some social contexts from Brazil and Spain. So for today, I will keep my focus on Brazilian context, and also I will consider the social isolation concept, but I will consider a reflection on the reopening process of economic activities that we are living in Brazil now. I took 3 theoretical assumptions to support my reflections. The first one is that the sport and physical exercises can contribute for good health conditions, education, and well-being. It makes this kind of action that to deserve our attention, to deserve our investment, to make people to engage in this kind of practice. But we are living a pandemic, and it demands social isolation, it demands social distance as important action against the virus spreading. So we are living in a global sense, but especially also in Brazil, a contradictional scenario where we must to invest to people to engage in physical exercise and sport, including as a part of our public policies related to health. But we are living in a pandemic context that puts some barriers, that puts some issues over our actions, over our lives. And the third theoretical assumption is that we are living in Brazil. We are talking about Brazil, a country that is unfortunately is characterized as high social inequality. And especially during this period of pandemic, we are living a growing process of the social inequality. One example is the increasing of the employment rate that the last month has reached around 14%. It's possible also to consider that the social inequality is related in Brazil to the practice of physical exercise and sport. If we related it with socioeconomic condition, as the wage, as the salary of the Brazilian is higher, also higher is their engagement in the practice of physical exercise and sport. And the same happens with the academic degree. As higher is the academic degree, higher is the engagement with physical exercise and sport. So we can consider that to practice physical exercise and sport in Brazil, even before the pandemic, is a factor of social distinction. And especially with the pandemic, the growing of the social inequality, we must consider that this scenario is worse. Before the pandemic, we can find that a little bit more than a half of the population over 14 years old in Brazil use it to practice physical exercise in our sport. But in data from June, we can find that it's happening a decreased movement of the practice of physical exercise in Brazil, around 20%. So we are living a context of the growing of social inequality at the same time that people is practicing less physical exercise and sport. What we can see that, especially from government campaigns to face this scenario, to face the social context, especially based on the encouragement of individual decision for engagement to physical exercise and sport programs. And my question is, only to motivate people for practice is enough within this context? So I invite you to reflect on actions for the growing of the engagement of Brazilians to physical exercise and sport within this context of COVID-19 pandemic. And I invite you to consider in two scenarios, one of social isolation and social distancing, and the second one of the economic activities reopening process. And I will take account some categories from Pierre Bourdieu's reflexive sociology to support some of my reflections. Regarding the social isolation and social distancing context, unfortunately in Brazil, we have never practiced a very strong social isolation period or actions. Unfortunately, a lot of people in Brazil or didn't engage in this kind of practice, or a lot of people must work outside home. Unfortunately, in Brazil, the home office is also a factor of social inequality. In data from this year, we have around 8.4 million of people that work in home office condition. But the great majority of these people, 6.1 million of these people that work in home office, that have the condition to stay at home, has the higher education degree completed, or even the post-graduation degree completed. So we have a condition that to stay at home is not just about choice. It's just about the socioeconomic and sociocultural condition. So even for these people, considering these privileged people that can stay at home, can work at home, we also find some barriers for the physical exercise and sport practice at home. For example, not always people count with appropriated facilities. Not always people count with a specific knowledge about physical exercise and sport training. The conditions to work in home office put in a lot of people a workload growth. Spend more time, spend more energy, spend more worrying about work at home during this period. And also the domestic tasks, the domestic routine has growth in terms of the increasing of tasks, especially because people are more time at home, and there are more people at home. Consider, and I'd like to highlight that, consider this privileged group. Related to the reopening process that is affecting a movement with a lot of uncertainty here in Brazil. Consider that great part of Brazilian population, great part of less privileged groups are working outside home and are living not so adequate conditions of security related to the virus spreading, and the cares and protocols related to avoid the virus spreading. Especially we are living in a not so clear context, especially because we have in Brazil an underreporting on contamination and death data. We don't know clearly if we will have a new wave of virus spreading, or even if we are leaving the first wave, or if the first wave has finished. We don't know yet. We don't know anything with certainty. It's a problem to think on people to engage for physical exercise and sport, because consider all this scenario of social inequality, consider this scenario of not so clear perspective, clear landscape about the virus. Not all facilities to the practice were reopened. And I would like to say that I agree with this, because a lot of these facilities have the potential to make grow the virus spreading, but it's a barrier for the practice of physical education sport, adding to all these social inequality contexts. So it's necessary to consider that people that will, or we hope that will, to engage for sport and physical exercise practice, we act in a utopic region of freedom. We cannot think that only to motivate, only to encourage people to engage for practice is enough. It's important to consider that we act related to our habitus that is a product from this mutual influence between our social cultural context, the socioeconomic conditions of life. This is critical here in Brazil with our dispositions for action. My question is, campaigns for engagement, only motivating people to engage, are they enough within this context? Certainly not. Certainly, in general terms, it's necessary, more investments to make the physical exercise and sport practice as less distinctive in Brazil. Simultaneous investment on better socioeconomic life conditions, first of all. And second, investments on education for practice and a culture of body movement. For example, public policies for better labor conditions, guarantee of leisure time, better socioeconomic conditions of life, and also investments on education for physical exercise and sport practice. Finishing, for this reopening process that we are living, it's very important to invest in Brazil on the population's life condition to talk about the engagement for physical exercise and sports. It's not only about motivation. It's about the necessity of strong public policies on the continuum of financial support for vulnerable groups, to continue it for a long period. It's necessary the financial support for employers with economic difficulties to face these higher rates of unemployment. It's necessary to invest in academic and professional education and invest in adaptations on the facilities of practice, and procedures for security to contain the spread of the virus. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. And for the end, the government offering of free professional guidance and free access to public physical activity and sport facilities, especially to give opportunities for practice. And for the end, to invest in education for prevention cares related to the virus spread for these practices. It's not only about to offer the condition for practice, it's necessary condition for practice safely. And the investment in create a culture of practice, of physical exercise and sport within this context of bettering of the life conditions of all the population in Brazil and to decrease this gap related to social inequality. These were the references that I used for this speech. Thank you very much for your attention. I'm sorry about the time, Christine, and I'm completely available for questions or for comments. Here's my email for future contacts if you want. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation and for the opportunity to share this moment with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure, Renato. Now our second panelist is Nemesia Hijos. She is an anthropologist with a bachelor and a master in anthropology as well. And she's currently pursuing her PhD in social science at the University of Buenos Aires in Argentina, where she also serves as assistant professor. She's recipient of a doctoral fellowship from Argentina National Council for Scientific Research. And Nemesia is a member of research groups related to football, politics, and sports in general at the Gino Germani Research Institute. Okay, so Nemesia, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for the invitation. I am honored to be here and to share my reflections in what I name bodies, gender, and daily life in Argentina during the pandemic. So to start, I would outline my presentation that is organized into 3 sections. A brief introduction, local context, and a few methodological details, bodies, capitalism, and the culture of performance. And to close, I will share some final thoughts related to uneven opportunities. By gathering statistical information during the pandemic and also reflections from my ethnographic research on middle classes linked to running practices in the city of Buenos Aires, I seek to problematize the visions that simplify the situation of confinement by showing the multiple transformations in relation to the body and daily life for this group during the isolation that we know here in Argentina as ASPO. I talk about middle classes based on their income, educational level, consumption, and self-ascription. Also, I recognize myself relate of this group, yeah, because I feel part of this socio-cultural universe that I analyze. Argentina reaches March this year with a significant fall in employment, lack of labor protection, irregular investment in science, and an urban and housing divestment due to a progressive scrapping of the state caused by the previous government. COVID-19 showed the vulnerability of our lives, and I consider that it shed light on less noticed inequalities and configured new ones. So I wonder, what modulations do the middle classes express in this crisis? After the spread and impact of the coronavirus on March 20, Argentina began a mandatory quarantine established by a national decree. Since then, these regulations have been renewed every 15 days with minimal flexibility. Then we have been going back and forward with different phases around the country. Here on the screen, you can see all these phases. As the weeks went by, the phases of quarantine were relaxed according to each particular scenario, while the metropolitan area of Buenos Aires remained under strict control. We remain for lots of months in phase 1. Even in this context, according to a Time magazine report in June 2020, Argentina was among the 11 countries that most effectively dealt with the global health crisis. The first week of isolation revealed the drop-off in economic activity, lack of protection for informal workers, change in working conditions as teleworking, and loss of employment. Also, the deficit of living conditions, emergency food and water supply, digital inequalities, an overlap of women tasks in care, domestic work, and educational assistance and support. People were forced to virtualize in all senses. Finally, the strong and extended presence at home meant greater exposure to violent situations. As we know, this pandemic does not affect everyone equally. In this framework, I noticed that we were asked to be active in many ways by doing things around the house to be productive and also exercising our bodies through various platforms. For this purpose, I came up with some queries that will guide us through this presentation. What structural inequalities are revealed by this pandemic? How did we reorganize ourselves at home? How the culture of performance is translated into people's practice and domestic organization. For some, taking care of the body is a practice related to the outdoors, in the parks, in the gyms, in the clubs. For the middle classes, exercising is having a time and a space for themselves, a moment related to personal conditioning and beautification. In many cases, it is also articulated with the culture of performance discourse. This paradigm proposes us to be always active, that we can't give up, that we must surpass ourselves and seek the best version of us. In this crisis context of general productivity and adapting, including to do it at home, running ends up being one of the sports per excellence of capitalism. Those who practice it feel satisfaction in doing something. This moral ethics is materialized in mechanisms of self-government and self-control with vigilance of the body, which are translated into devices that measure results, quantify objectives, and monitor activities to make us more efficient, more productive, and more rational. Confinement forced to stop the movement of these bodies to limit them to other spaces, where many of them also found ways to generate new opportunities and new strategies. First, for most of my interlocutors in my fieldwork, the lockdown was presented as a new challenge to demonstrate their resilience and strength abilities, and intersect with the fear of getting fat or losing physical shape. Those who reaffirm their identity through exposure to risk and productivity become the stars of the news during the first stage of the ASPO. They joined streaming classes, used their terraces and stairs of their apartments, exercises on their living rooms and balconies, and some even did marathons and ran 42 kilometers in their gardens and also using their balconies. And then they show all these feeds on social networks with the self-improvement messages. "Nothing can stop us" was the slogan of one of the most important sport brands. This was a way to demonstrate that they are ready to overcome adversity and willing to adapt to any context. It is not a minor detail that the first person among the 250 people that broke the quarantine in the city of La Plata was a runner. I call this first group the fanatics. Second, I found that some of my interlocutors dropped that level of training intensity. They started to feel some fatigue, exhausted, and were forced to make an interruption. Although they didn't surrender in an unproductive leisure, they have to attend to other responsibilities, especially those who lead the family economy and take care of the children. Domestic work and educational assistance and support, mostly women. Instead of power-intense workout, they found personal fulfillment and a way to combat anxiety in other activities such as yoga, meditation, gardening, or decorating their houses and apartments. I call this second group the quitters. Third, and finally, the beginners. For other people who were not close to sports, the stay-at-home motto was an invitation, a beginning, to reorganize schedules and routines, and plan a time for exercise and training activities during their teleworking time, from their homes, not feeling jam, for free in an accessible way that allows them to make a break and do something from themselves. So who are those who can continue with their lives even in this context? Who can demonstrate that resilience? As the lockdown progressed, the novelty of streaming classes and showing the positive use of quarantine as a time of investment and work of the body lost strength. After 200 days of confinement, it is a fact that people are tired of being at home. The streaming of fitness classes no longer has the same participation as before. The supposed democratization stopped. Gym chains noticed the declines in memberships, and coaches are looking for strategies to continue earning money. From the beginning, the racing and sport companies alluded how lockdown was an assault to freedom, civic rights, and affected mental health. In response to this pressure, the government established a protocol to regulate the practice of physical activity in the city of Buenos Aires. In June, during the first day of this permission, the parks were massively crowded with people running, which forced the authorities to review the announcement and take preventive measures. Runners became the enemies, the irresponsible ones, as a type of otherness. This scenario opened up a general debate about social responsibility as citizens, public health, risk, and democracy. These questions that seem to be specific to one group actually articulated demands from other sectors of middle classes that saw their ways of life altered. So, in this context of economic and health crisis, is there a claim more legitimate to another? Which is the way to stay active nowadays? How do we create an environment to cope with isolation in houses that were built for an unsettled living? Argentina nowadays is going through the hardest time in terms of spread of the virus, and paradoxically, citizenship is exhausted. The semantic related to the body care, somehow specific of a group, seems to expand porously to other domains. Terms like opportunity, self-improvement, self-governance, to be flexible, versatile, to refit spaces, to translate in positive terms, the contingency came as a continuous loop in our lives. New semantics of productivity are articulated in positive terms of well-being statements. In relation to the middle classes, the paradoxes of caring oneself or their families are in tension with the social care of the other. Confusing expressions tending to create a false dichotomy between individualism and solidarity, when such categories cannot be grasped without addressing gender social inequalities. It is true that every crisis has its contradictions, but any contradiction deserves to be understood. So finally, I have more questions that maybe you can help me to answer it. We can ask ourselves which subjectivities are amplified in this new global scenario. What will remain and what will perish in this pandemic? I appreciate your attention. Thank you very much for this opportunity. And here you can see also the references.
Okay, thank you very much, Nemesia, for your presentation. And now we're going with Simona. I will introduce you to Simona Safarikova. That will be our next. We will have. Let me remind you that all of you will have afterwards the opportunity to raise questions. All the people in the audience, the ones of you that want to raise a question for all our participants, you can write us in the chat, and we will be glad to transmit the questions to all the four presenters. Okay, so therefore I'm going to introduce you to Simona Safarikova, who works as an assistant professor at Palacký Olomouc University in the Czech Republic. She studied physical education and geography, and currently is based at the Department of Development and Environment Studies. And she obtained her doctoral degree in kinanthropology at the Faculty of Physical Culture. And her research has focused on the topic of sport for development, and she has been involved in different projects around the world, in Colombia and in other countries. So so please, Simona, so go ahead with your presentation. So we'll like and welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much, Rolando. I think I can share the screen, Christine, for now. So you will probably enable me. I feel very honored to be invited also to this panel as an external person, not being Latin American, just being in touch with Latin America, doing research in Latin America, but coming completely from a different context, as Rolando said. I still can't share it. My aim today is more like sharing reflections on what I have known about Latin America, especially about Colombia, and also how my personal work concerning Latin America and concerning the activities me and my colleagues are having there, how it has been influenced, and what kind of changes we had to do in our research planning. And I'm also.
Thanks, Simona. It should work now.
Okay. Yes, great. Okay, then sorry, I just will have.
Simona gets her shares her screen with us. Maybe some context why the organizers Miguel and Rodrigo both insisted on including in the panel somebody that was not from Latin America. It was to keep in with the topic we had for the Chile Congress that has been postponed, that was in collaboration with ISSA, CLACSO, and ALESDE, this idea of exchanging between scholars from Latin America and elsewhere, which is why Simona was invited, and Rodrigo and Miguel insisted on having someone that was not from Latin America to ensure this continued dialogue between researchers from Latin America and elsewhere. Simona, back to you.
Well, seems that I'm not really able now share my presentation. Save. Okay, now it should work. So thank you for that. Okay. Well, now it should work.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm happy for that. And thank you for making also this connection clear. As I'm someone who really also think that the intercultural meetings and sharing is the way how we can cooperate all of us together. So as I said, I will talk more on my and my colleagues' research activities in Latin America and how it was before and during the COVID-19 times. So I'm not going to present research as such, but more like some reflections of what has been happening in my research and what has been happening also in Colombia with COVID-19. As I am not Colombian, not Latin American, so then I would be really happy if someone who has even more information can share more. Yeah. So I just would like to make clear who am I and how I got into the panel. And thanks to Christine and also to Miguel for getting me and explaining. So I'm really external to Latin America, but I've been involved in research in Latin America already for 5 years, and I've been going there like almost every year. And now it was stopped in 2020 because of the COVID pandemic. So I'm very much every time learning from my experience in Latin America doing the research, especially in Colombia. My topic is really connected with sport for development. So how is sport used as a tool to achieve other non-sporting aims? And I've been involved in Colombia since 2015, yeah, with different organizations, different NGOs, and also different universities and different stakeholders. And why Colombia? I think that for someone being interested in this concept, sport for development, sport and development, or sport for development and peace, it's really a place to be because Colombia has entered the post-conflict phase in its evolution, and sport and physical activities are very much used in this post-conflict process, yeah, and in the peace building as a tool to put together different populations. And you can really see it widely, yeah, all around the country. So I have like 3 different inputs, yeah, how my work and the work of my colleagues, academic colleagues or colleagues from the Colombian NGOs was influenced. So this year we got with 2 of my colleagues, one of them I think is online, Billy Greff from Brazil. We were successful in applying for an IOC research grant, yeah, that is called South American Sport for Development Voices and the Sustainable Development Goals. And this one already was influenced by the COVID pandemic, yeah, because the project was approved in May, and we were asked due to the current situation to change the methodology in order to be like COVID sensitive. Yeah? So we got some time to change it, and as you may imagine, it's not possible for me coming from Europe to Latin America currently. So we were thinking with my colleagues, Billy from Brazil and Arnold from my university, what to do. Yeah, and we moved all the things, or the majority of the things, online. So we will research or we will have a series of case studies in 3 South American countries, which is Brazil, Uruguay, and Colombia, using online interviews, using online focus groups, and using the analysis of the documents. Yeah? So we will not be able to move as before, as we planned. But on the other side, this also gives another opportunity to local research assistants, yeah, that will be more involved in the research. Yeah, so here the COVID influenced, let's say, negatively for me, because I will not be able to move. Yeah, and we will not be able to move for now from Europe towards Latin America. But I think that it opens for us a possibility to even involve more the local research assistants. Yeah. So this is one of the influences I've already seen in my research and in my research activities connected to Latin America and connected to COVID-19 pandemic. Other one is also from the academic life, yeah, that is connected a bit to sports, because with two Colombian colleagues, we've been since more than 1 year preparing a book that is focusing on sport for development in Latin America. And it's prepared in cooperation with two Colombian researchers, and one of them coming from the National Sports School in Cali, like one of the leading universities concerning sports studies in Colombia. And well, again, this work got very much influenced by the COVID-19 pandemic. As you can imagine, many of us, being the researchers and the lecturers at the universities, we had to switch for the online teaching. Yeah, so we had to prepare a lot of teaching materials and a lot of online sessions. So this book is going, let's say, delayed. Yeah, because many people even finally were not able to hand in their manuscripts, or just decided really to drop out, and some of them ask us for delays, yeah, in handing the manuscript. So this is another influence that COVID had in the academic life of preparation of a special book issue on sport for development in Latin America. And the last thing I would like to mention, connecting my research and Colombia and COVID-19, is how everything is being handled in Colombia. Yeah, I was in touch with my colleagues from the different NGOs and from the different universities, and Colombia has been since March in a complete lockdown. Yeah. So people could even not move from one city to another city, and it was really very strict. What was also happening was that, for example, the small kids until the age of 6 were even not able or allowed to go outside. Yeah, they were confined like at least for 2 months at home, which you can imagine is really a difficult situation for the parents and for the kids. So the country experienced really a very challenging situation, and it has not been finished. Yeah. So universities had to move online, and as I know, my colleagues were really overwhelmed with the work starting teaching online. Yeah. Concerning the activities of the Sport for Development NGOs, I was in touch with some of them, and suddenly they were in a situation where when they were not able really to get in touch with their populations. Yeah, they work on a daily basis with the kids, with the youth, but suddenly, well, the activities were not taking place because of the lockdown. Yeah. So, for example, one of them or many of them decided to go online, but they used different strategies. Yeah. For one of them, for example, they decided to start some activities online for the kids, yeah, for the youth. One of the problems was, for example, that not all the families, especially in the vulnerable areas, do have the internet connection. Yeah? So they were not able to reach several of the kids. So then they were able to ask for some finances, and they started to prepare paper cards that they decided to distribute to the kids in order to follow or to do certain physical activities during the day. Yeah? This is one of the concrete example how it was handled in one of the NGOs I'm in touch with. Other example is that the organization decided to go online, and they decided to do it through the mobiles of the parents. Yeah? So they were sending some activities to WhatsApp of the WhatsApp number of the parents of the kids. And like this, they got to involve the whole family into the physical activity. So they were supposed to fulfill certain physical activity tasks and then send it back or report it back to the organization. This proved to be really successful, as I was said for now, because the whole family was involved, and generally each of the parents of the kids does have a mobile and is connected through WhatsApp. And one of the last example is that what one of the organizations did was to prepare a curriculum about COVID-19. So there are activities how to prevent, how to protect yourself, and kids can learn this way what is the virus about and how to behave. So these are my examples as being an external to Latin America, but very much liking to work there in cooperation with my local colleagues. And I'm really prepared also for the questions and remarks. So this is from Czech Republic. Thank you very much for your patience and for the attention. And here are also my my personal data.
Okay. Thank you very much, Simona, for your presentation. We'll now, before introducing the last presenter, Rodrigo, let me remind you that all of you that are interested in raising some questions to the panelists, and you can write us in the chat, and we will let know the presenters the questions. You can write either in Spanish, English, or in French. Feel free to do that in the language you prefer, so we will be able to transmit the questions to any one of the four, or to the four of them if you're interested. Okay. So thank you again, Simona, and we're going to the last. The last presenter is Rodrigo Soto Lagos. He's a scholar at the Andrés Bello University in Viña del Mar. He's a doctor in psychology from the Pontificia Universidad Católica de Valparaíso, and he is coordinator of a working group of sports, culture, and society in Latin America, in the Latin American Council of Social Sciences, and is leading a research that is named The Complexity of Reducing Physical Inactivity in School, Body Practices Explained from Public, Subsidized, and Private Schools. So, please, Rodrigo, go ahead. Thank you for being with us also, like all of you.
Thank you, Rolando, and hello to everyone. Thanks for being here. I would like to thanks to ISSA board to invite me and Miguel Cornejo to organize this panel. Also, I give you all the regards of Latin American Council of Social Science through the working group Sport, Culture, and Society that Rolando mentioned. Before my speech, I would like to commemorate October 12th as a day where Europe and America were made together. I will not commemorate death in the name of colonization. I will commemorate life. And this meeting as a concrete signal of partnership between Latin America and other continents without colonization lens. This means, for instance, that ISSA or CLACSO or ALESDE congresses, in few years, probably Latin American people and English speaking, the English speaking world will chat together in Spanish or in English, because both languages will be valid in scientific language. I will read my presentation, so please, if anyone have questions, do not hesitate to express at the end of this speech, please. My presentation is called Challenges for Sport in Chile post-COVID-19, Thinking with Buen Vivir. Buen Vivir is a concept that in Latin America we were studied, and I think in this meeting it's interesting and important to communicate with you, with all people who are here. Most Chilean cities has been known as sportive cities, but at the same time, a considerable amount of them have the highest rates of physical inactivity. Likewise, the destructive effects of COVID-19 reflect a contradiction that must be resolved by public policies and sport organizations, focusing their works on people who have the right to practice. One survey coordinated by the Latin American Council of Social Science, CLACSO, in partnership with Andrés Bello University, indicates that 60% of Chilean population that previously exercised previous of COVID-19 has stopped to doing exercise as a result of COVID. In addition, this same study indicates that those who have been able to work in the pandemic period have intensified their lives, working more than the legal until 19 hours per day. This information is coherent with the Chilean Ministry of Sports and Health, which mentioned that between 80 and 89% of Chilean population is physically inactive, and that it's an argument to invite people to develop healthy lifestyles through sports. When we talk about sports, we not only talk about this practice as the only possible option to carry out in my country, for example. Recreation and physical exercise and sport as well are understood as body practices. Most body practices and sport must also be valid as option and will be guaranteed by public policies, as we consider them as right of each citizen of our country. This presents us a challenge of thinking about sports, exercise, and recreation for local and national organizations that look at the 21st century. In this way, I would like to point out some challenges, I would like to introduce some ideas before I will present the concept of buen vivir. In this, the challenges are multiple. The first, for the present and for the future, is to invite people to exercise, again, with safety conditions. Not safety expressing an individual responsibility, yeah? Practice, I think, practice sport or doing sport in safety terms, I think the Chilean state and many others will promote as a right. We have the right to practice sport with safety conditions. Why? To enjoy movement and also to return to public spaces, to socialize through the different body practices that can be performed in all cities and in my reality in Chilean cities. This means that the Ministry of Sport must know what the effects of COVID-19 have done in our cities to plan, for example, to plan the next steps. For example, it is necessary to know how telework has affected family dynamics in order to create programs to make it possible to reconcile or to reconcile sports and exercise with parenting or with the care of children and work. The second challenge is to promote sports, exercise, and recreation consistent with the history and culture of our country or with other countries. This means that it is essential to strengthen the sports clubs, for example, and to strong communities. They have this different, why? Because they have different ways to recreate themselves and practicing the sports due to geographical surroundings and local culture. With this, each club or organization carry with their history, anecdotes, and project. This is an invitation to promote sports and exercise as a buen vivir tool more than a healthy life one. To do that, I will compare both concepts, one developed in Occident, and the second one, buen vivir, were developed in South America by the regional communities. First, I will compare buen vivir and healthy lives in 5 terms. First, in accordance with the aforementioned, the notion of healthy lives focused on the individual health care, avoid diseases or risk behaviors. It is expected under this logic that people reduce the possibility of dying by not doing sports or physical activity, and that they act responsible with respect their own care. Good life, or buen vivir, for its part, propose a collective existence, an enjoyment of life under a social logic in harmony with others and with the environment. This means that health care is understood in non-individual terms, highlighting an important difference between both notions, since by collective design, the problems not only a space is open for people to share their experiences, but also collective care spaces are built that can provide more and better solutions. In the case of some policies here in Chile, healthcare and sport practice is individual. From here, the suggestion that can be offered to collectivize this dimension of life, considering good life or buen vivir, is to broaden the focus of explanation and solution of problems. Since in this way, the knowledge that each person and community have built in relationship with care and playful experiences that tend to live a better life. Sorry. Second, in theoretical terms, healthy lives is presented and promoted to avoid death, and good life, or buen vivir, instead arises and spreads to promotion life. Again, a difference between both concepts. On one hand, globalized and neoliberal capitalism promote the creation and implementation of public policies that promote a healthy or healthy lives in general, and in Latin American or Chile in particular, to reduce the investment in health, and thus avoid unnecessary expenses for both states and individuals, expelling economical arguments to solve these health and social problems. Third, it is worth mention that view or health that emerge from both perspectives. On the one hand, the vision of health proposed by the notion of healthy life is linked to a perspective that one Brazilian scholar, called Walter Vracht, qualifies as negative understanding of health, since it focuses more on disease or on eliminating the risk of becoming ill. On the other hand, from the perspective of good live or buen vivir, we can express that the health approach, following the same author, is recognized as a positive vision since it focuses above all in the positive aspects of life, such as the possibility of living well or to relate and care for others in community. Fourth, it is important to differentiate the views of the subject present in both discourses. From the notion of healthy life, the ideal subject that is constructed is active, entrepreneurial, and individual subject responsible for her or for their own health and well-being, capable of making the best decision for healthcare and the better compete in society. The subject or the idea of people or of a person that Buen Vivir proposed is a subject that is part of the territory and of the others, promoting a vision of human being that is an actor in and with others. It will in turn be a subject of society, along with the land, the wind, the water, and the forest. In other words, the person will be morally and ethically responsible with others, with his community or her community, and with the environment. Fifth, and by being in connecting with the other points, the context in which the subject acts is also different. On the one hand, healthy life is built individually in a context where neoliberal capitalism has no strokes, or in Bauman's terms, it's liquid. In current capitalism, there are no securities, structures, or limits. Therefore, it is each person individually who must build them. For example, in flexible work, it is me who thinks about my working day. It is me who decides when I do physical activity, and it is I who decide when to decide. Against this, two ideas can be expressed. The first is linked to what Yara Carballo mentions regarding the possibility of choosing. Since not all people have this privilege, we know that Latin America is marked by inequality in access to basic goods and services, configuring sport and physical activity or physical exercise for some people with a use value almost similar to a luxury. And the second, taking up the idea of a lack of structures, practicing sport under this logic allows social ties to build with weakness and under an instrumental sense. I mean that in this scenario, it is not necessary, and you do not even want to belong, for example, to a sports club, since my interest is individual. What I need is to run somewhere and spend the energy required not to be obese. In this way, so with this comparison, in this way, and to finalize, it is extremely important that the state of Chile and other states of Latin America, and probably other states of the world, respect and take care of its citizens and promote sports and body practices, criticizing the productive and economical logic to develop in our countries. I suggest, to finalize, some ideas. First, develop strong sport clubs because they know their own territory and how people recreate themselves in their communities. They are the ones who knows what is happening in each territory since before the arrival of this pandemic. Second idea, I think we need to use the natural environment to practice sport. In Chile, we have many sea to practice sports there, so it is possible to develop new ideas and new sport practices to use the natural environment. Third, criticize the individualistic perspective according to limited rights through health arguments. Four, and this is an important issue, I think, and Nemesia also talk about that, be responsible on gender issues. And the last idea, I think it's important to promote sport and exercise as a buen vivir tool, not to avoid death, but also to promote life. Yeah. Thanks. I'm sorry for the English, but here in Chile, we speak Spanish, so English is not my first language. I apologize for that. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Rodrigo. And thank you very much to the 4 panelists, because the different ideas that you share are indeed very good and give a reflection of what's going on nowadays in Latin America, in the Latin American context. We still don't have any question in the chat box. I cannot see anyone, but then we could ask a question in terms of how do you perceive, okay, here I think it comes a question for all panelists. How do you think the pandemic is going to influence sport public policies in Latin America in a possible, let's hope there is one post-COVID world? From Billy Kraft. This is his question.
May I, Rosa?
Yeah, go ahead, Renato. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. First of all, thank you, Billy, for the question, for the very interesting and very contestable, I don't know how to say, question. It's very hard to give a straight answer, but I would like to share some reflections about it. First of all, I agree with you, Billy, that we must to ask about a possible post-COVID world. My impression is not possible to predict the future, but my impression is that the effects of the pandemic will last for a long time. And more than this, will change the ways of we structure our social relations. I'm talking about not only about the vaccine, I don't know in English, a vaccine, a vacuna in Spanish, I don't know in English the right term.
Vaccination.
A vaccination, yeah, thank you, Simone. I really believe that it's not the final point to have a mass vaccination, because we have a lot of variables about some cultures, different cultures about vaccination, different responses from people about this. Well, I really don't believe that we can talk about a post-COVID world. I believe that COVID is part of our society, and what we can make in the future is to be well prepared to live with this, well prepared in terms of knowledge, in terms of social structure, social organization, and well prepared in terms of to take care about it. Answering more straightly for the question from Billy, unfortunately, I would like to say that the effect of pandemic in the public policies in Latin America, I would like to say that the effect would be a more effective participation of the state in our life, a more effective participation of the state to subside, to support people, even for financial perspective or education or even health. But I don't know if I can bet on it in a short period of time, especially because I don't know, the main political position of our government, I don't know if I could bet on this, but it's necessary to say that we are discussing about this. It can be a good point of view that we are discussing about the government perceived that it's necessary to put money on the hand of the people. It's necessary to put the money in the hand of the small employer. It's necessary to put money to transit in our life. I don't know if it will last for a long time, but it's necessary. And to be coherent with my speech, I believe that's necessary to think how to make better the life condition of people in Latin America, not only in Brazil, but in Latin America. Before to discuss the engagement for sport, engagement for physical exercise, or to discuss the engagement of education in a lot of areas, it's a priority to make better the life conditions, to make better the opportunity for people to make bigger their horizons for action. I would like to say that we are on this way, but I don't know. I have a lot of doubts about it. So in short period of time, I believe that the public policies in Brazil, I don't know in Latin America in a global sense, but in Brazil, I believe that the governments perceived that's necessary to invest public money to subsidize the people's life. In the short period of time, I believe that they perceived it. My question is if the way that they are doing is enough. I have some doubts about it, but I wouldn't bet much anything. I wouldn't bet anything that will take so long, especially because the wave that the political wave that we're living in a global sense, not all in Latin America. My fear is that when we have the vaccination, people think, oh, everything has done, and let's keep our back life, our life back. I fear it. I fear it because, just to conclude, I'm talking more than my speech, I'm sorry. Just to conclude, I fear that now in the state of São Paulo, where I live, we have 4 phases of reopening. And we are living the 3rd phase in some cities, and some cities in the final phase of reopening. I'm very worried about it because when we reach the 3rd phase here in my city, Ribeirão Preto, I found a lot of people playing football without masks, without any kind of protection. And when I saw this, I was with my friends and I commented to him, oh, they're playing football without masks, without no kind. And I didn't perceive that the son of my friend was playing. And he said to me, no, we are in the yellow phase, the 3rd phase. It's open. It's open. There's no necessary for care. It's open. The government said that it's open. It's very worrying for me because I just bet a little bit money for this short period of time of public policies supporting the life of people. I don't know if the vaccination happened, and I really worry about people that think that we will have a world post-COVID. I don't believe in it. I believe that COVID is part of our life and we must to learn how to live with this in a better sense. I'm sorry about the time again. Sorry. I will control myself if we have another question, I promise. Thank you.
I would like, if I can, to add something about Renato's word, if you let me. Okay.
Yeah.
I really appreciate Billy's question, and I also add some reflections about Renato presentation and reflections related to gender. I'm thinking that here in Argentina, the government that is nowadays, Fernandez government, is really attending to, or trying to help vulnerability or some problems related to economic situations, for example, with the barrios populares or people that live in difficult conditions, but especially more than the pre-existing inequalities. I think that nowadays this situation and the time that we spend in our homes let us reflect about the gender inequalities, especially related to the violence situations. During these like 200 days of confinement in Argentina, we realized the complexity of the reporting situations of violence, and especially more than thinking about policies related to sports, we realized, but really the government realized, that we have to take care about the violent situations and the inequalities related to gender. So the government tried to put more attention to this situation related with violence at home, especially to women, and they started to organize like networks, also like women's network initiatives. For example, the Red Chin Strap campaign, that it was like a chin strap related if you are in a difficult situation of gender violence, and it was organized by the Ministry of Women, Gender and Diversity, and it was called like La Otra Pandemia, because this situation realized us to pay more attention about violent situations at home, because we are forced to be at home more time. So this is not a law, it is only like a campaign organized by the Ministry of Women, Gender and Diversity. And I think that this is really important to take care of the body in another way. The other thing that I would like to add related to inequalities and gender, related to public policies, instead of thinking only about the sports, is that during this pandemic, this government, Fernandez government, tried to impulse a law related to trans communities, because we realized that they are facing more troubles with their lives, because they are supposed to work only like sex workers, and they have really complex inequalities to have other kind of life. So they are not able to work, and they have no social protection, and they live in precarious conditions. So this policy, it was really important to start making visible all these trans communities, and it is a law nowadays during this pandemic that 1% of the public places to work must add these trans communities. So I think that also it is related to body and gender, to pay attention to these pre-existing inequalities, and it is another way to problematize older problems also. Thank you. I'm sorry about my time.
Simona, would you like to add something, or else Rodrigo also is there? Like,
yes,
go on, Rodrigo. I can go last.
Okay, thank you. I think now and probably always, sports now it's a second institution, or no less important institution that comparing with health or with education, with work policies. why I said that, because I think here in Chile, sports programs and public sports program probably will reduce their public investment, because this government says that the problems are not in sports, because the problems are in work issues and education, in health, obviously, and sport. That's why I think sports it's at the second level probably, because if you compare sports with health or with work or with other things, it's not a priority now. So this reduce of public investment in sport, I think, will it's strong, or is in the way to strong the individualization of sport, of doing sport, because the governments will say that do or not doing sport, it's an individual problem, because the social or global problems are health, are work, and the other things. And that's why I think in Chile, reading the news and analyzing the discourse of our governments, I think this reduction of investment in sport will or is related with individualization of the decision of do or not doing sports here in Chile. And as Renato said, here many cities of Chile are we have 5 steps. The final is where is the new normality. And my city, for example, is in the 2nd step, and we only can do sports individually. Yeah, so I can go out to run, but without others. And if you do sports like or football or judo or other sports, if you do a sport with someone, probably police or health institution can say you are not correct. Yeah, you are not in the law. So, well, as Renato said, I'm not bet. I'm not sure what happened in the future, but I think the logic of this government is strong the individualization of policies. Yeah, they always say that social problems could or will resolve with the individual action. So I think Chile is in this way.
May I will try to be short, yeah. And for me, it's really difficult to talk in this matter about Colombia. Like, it's more my general thoughts. I think that we will not be really able to talk about post-COVID world, but about with COVID world, yeah. That we will have to learn how to survive or live with this. I see there really a contradiction when talking about COVID, yeah, because it is also said that the physical activity is helping us to get stronger body, but it's the first one that is getting limited by our government. Yeah? It's also happening here in my country. Yeah? It's the first one that gets limited, and people can't go exercise into the different sporting places. What I think is more probable from my point of view, and I'm more on the side of Rodrigo probably, I have the feeling that sport and physical activity is not really going to be priority for our governments, yeah, in a short period of time. So I think that many of the activities can be moving online, yeah, And I've experienced also in Colombia that some yoga classes are already moving online. Then there is a question of inequalities, because equalities and inequalities, because especially rich people will be able to afford that, not those one that are not so economically strong. And I think that the responsibility is going more into the hands of ourselves as individuals. Yeah, and if we want, as the ISSA community or as people who are working with sports, more support for the sport policies, I think that we will need more proof and be more active with our governments.
I would like to just make a quick comment, and of course it's very complex to mention like the whole Latin America and how it will behave, because even though we look like similar, we are very different. And I do believe there are certain elements that will influence. For example, what Rodrigo explains, the difference between healthy life and good living, I mean the concept of good living, that in some countries involves several ministries, and that will impact, I understand that will impact sport. And recently the Ibero-American Sport Council had a meeting, and there were lots of information in which by the first time ever, they were promoting sport or physical activity, I should say, physical activity through TV. In some places, in some countries in Latin America, that never before that happened. So this mindset, it could change. So now, having this said, this short answer, because I'm not a panelist, I have a question here from Christine. So she says in Canada, many institutions and government are worried about mental health. Physical activity and sports are seen as an important to maintain mental health during the restricted social possibilities because of COVID. Is that part of the government concern in Latin America too? So will you answer in the same order? Renato first.
Can you hear me? Yeah, okay. Okay, thank you, Christine, for the question. Certainly, it's a concernment from the governments in Latin America about the mental health. But what I perceive about it is that exactly the criticism that I did in my speech. There's a worry about it. There's the awareness that the exercise can be good for the mental health, can help for the good condition of mental health. But the politics to disclosure of the necessity of the benefits of exercise is still based on the idea of motivation. It still is based on the idea of encouragement of people to engage. Here in Brazil, unfortunately, we have maybe the majority of our population that's more worried to have a formal work, to have a better condition to sometimes to eat, sometimes to live, than to think about exercise for mental health. What I think that's dangerous in this relation is to ignore the necessity to make people empowered to engage to physical exercise, is to blame the victim. I don't know if the expression does exist in English. Is to blame the victim. So you are sedentary, so it's your fault. It's your fault because you don't try to make exercise, so it's your fault because it's easy just to put tennis shoes and run. But it's necessary to consider all the complex social context in this people live. Yes, it's important to make exercise for mental health, and we have a lot of people in Brazil that could only put the tennis shoes and run. I agree with this. We have people with this condition, but only to invest on motivation, I believe it's not enough. It's necessary to invest to make better the condition for people to choose for this idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Renato. Then Nemesia, would you like to add something?
Yes, I really agree. Thank you, Christine, about your question. I really agree with Renato. I think that this reflection related to, of course, thinking that mental health is related to sport. We know that we feel better when we practice sport, especially if we're doing with other people, if we practice outside. But it's also important to think that not everybody has the opportunity to have the disposition of time and to practice sport. So we are talking also about inequalities, gender inequalities, economic inequalities, when we are talking about sport, practicing sport as a civic right, or linking it with freedom or with democracy. Especially in my presentation, I try to show this tension between those people who react to the government asking to a special permission to practice sport related to an individual sport like runners here in the parks in Buenos Aires, and they were asking for this civic right. And they have this tension with other kind of people that they are trying to ask for those permission for go outside to work. So we have here inequalities related to class. We have here a problem related to class and gender, of course. So between these days here in Argentina, we have a lot of people asking for democracy and trying to reorganize their demands by embracing like a proper and a privatized life, and not thinking that we are living like a special moment of our life, and that the world is changing and it's going to be different from nowadays. So these demands are related to individualism, and they are related to capitalism and neoliberalism. So we have to think in all those varieties when we are thinking about mental health also. So I think just one more idea, and it's a question that maybe this motivation, reflection, this invitation to think that if you don't practice sport, you don't have the energy enough to practice, or the time, and you are doing another thing, that maybe is a new version of do it yourself, this reflection that is really related to a meritocracy idea, and it's also related with this paradigm time that we are living. So that's all. I think maybe you can understand my idea. I hope so.
Thank you, Nemesia. Simona.
As I'm not really a Colombian and I'm not there currently, difficult to answer if it's a part of the Colombian policies. As far as I know, the government tried to encourage people to move even during the COVID times. Yeah? So in Colombia, they were having shifts, like going outside, females and males, and shifting every other day. So the government is aware of the positive effects of physical activity, but I'm not sure how much it goes forward to support it really, let's say, financially in the future. And that's what I would be able to say.
Okay. Thank you, Simona. And Rodrigo?
Don't pass me, please.
No? Okay. Okay.
I agree with the idea that sport is important to mental health, but I do believe that mental health is important to do sports. And I think nowadays our mental health is in problem, no? We are working as we are here, many scholars, and probably we work more than 8, 10, 12 hours per day. And I have two daughters, and at the same time I'm working and taking care of my children and doing my relation or doing my family. So I think the conditions that COVID give us to all of us, I think it's affected now our mental health, but our completely life, I think. And sports, we need to find some hour or some space in our schedule to put the sport there. I'm not sure if we have, as a Chilean citizen, I'm not sure if we have the time or we have the mental health to do sport now. We have almost 20,000 people dead here in Chile, and probably last week one university make a survey, and this survey says that 50% of Chilean people know one person or one family who one person died with about COVID. So we will have many health or mental health issues to resolve. Probably sports, I'm not sure if sports will be the first priority of people. So I think sports is a tool or is important to mental health, okay, yeah, but we have to reflect on what is or how is our mental health now because of COVID. So I invert, I put the inverse relation. What is the relation about mental health to a sport?
Thank you, Rodrigo. Sorry, Rosa, go.
Sorry, thank you. Christine, do we have more time for one more question, for a round of questions?
It depends. We have done an hour and a half. If there is a question in the chat, and we can have some short answers, but it should be the last question.
Okay, it's a question from Pinar related with physical education. So it seems the way physical education has been delivered now, I mean, it's under the responsibility of parents, and we know about the equipments that are needed. So she answers if the way that she asks if the way it has been decided how to deal with physical education has made it like very exclusive. So how is being done in your countries?
Let's keep the order. Okay, may I talk? Okay, thank you. Very interesting question, Pinar. Thank you very much. Very interesting and very hard question to answer, because here in Brazil we have a discussion, I would say, that not what's better for children, but what it's not worth for children to stay at home or to go back to school. Because the situation, I have a daughter, and sometimes I really don't know what to answer about this, because to stay at home, keep them isolated in many sense of this word, and to get back to school is to take a risk, is to take a lot of risks, and it's not certain yet here in Brazil, at least, what kind of protocols would really work for the children at school, and what kind of support, what kind of benefits would happen at school. So within this context, my answer is that in Brazil we are at a stage of discussion about the back to school. There's a lot of cities, a lot of states that didn't agree with this and won't open the school during this year, and have decided that during 2020 won't back the school activities. There's another places that the municipality or the state government has agreed with the return of the school activities. So we have different scenarios in different places. In my city, for example, the municipal group of schools, the schools that are administered by the municipality won't return the activities during this year. It's decided. But the private schools and the state administrated, the state of São Paulo administrated school, they have the authorization to keep their own decision. So some schools will get back on the next week, some of them, and another one won't do it. Decided to won't return. So here in Brazil, at least, we have a very obscure scenario about this. Obscure about the possibilities of return of schools, and obscure and not so clear scenario about how would school return, especially how physical education would return, how could happen these classes. And finishing this, I'm sorry about this answer, but it's not so clear for us yet. We are discussing what is less worse for children, and we're discussing how to make it in the case of the returns. But certainly I agree with you that to think about the parents can decide how the children will get back. I don't know if it's a good way, because it's not just a responsibility of the individual. It's not just the individual that's taking the risk. In this case of the pandemic, if one individual takes the risk, he can convert itself in a carrier of the virus. So it's not just about to wear the masks or not, not just about to take the risk, an individual risk or not, but it's about a collective risk, a collective decision. So I believe that to put in the hands of the parents the decision, it's a way to wash my hands about the decision. I don't know if it's the best way, but sincerely, I don't know, because we're discussing this right now here in Brazil yet. That's
okay, yes, I really agree with Renato that it's a really hard question to answer. Here in Argentina, we are also discussing this situation, especially with the children and the parents' responsibility to try to educate or to share this moment and try to answer to all the demands while they are working at their homes, if they have the opportunity to still have a work. But I think that it is remarkable to think about some things. For example, the children here in the city of Buenos Aires were the forgotten ones, as the old people, and they were the last to have the authorization, yes, to go outside. First the runners, first the activities to start getting, for example, to go for a run, or if you have like a special shop and you need a special permission, you have. And then at the last there were the children, so they spent like 4 months in their houses without any permission to go outside. And it was really difficult for them, and also especially for women and for the parents or the people in charge of these children. So nowadays, with all this pressure, not only of these social sectors, but especially on the media, we are trying to discuss, and nowadays, today, they are starting to go with a special protocol in the city of Buenos Aires to go again to the schools only in little groups, like bubbles, yes, like 9 children going together in some schools, and they are trying to try this moment and to think if it's possible to continue with these situations at the school during the next year. But for example, at the universities, in the University of Buenos Aires, we know that we are not going to return to classes because we are having like more quantity of students. So we are going to continue with the virtualized education. But now we have another problem, that who are those who can access to this virtualized life? I think that there we have another problem related to class.
Thank you, Nemesia. Simona, would you like to add something related to the schools and to the physical education, how you're handling in Colombia of what you know?
Yeah, I mean, I can't really. Yeah, I know that like the schools were closed, and what is just now coming into my head, like listening to your discussion, is really how different the measures and the situation is in different parts of the world. Yeah, and listening to you, like with the Latin American situation and the solution, it's completely different for me now here in Central Europe, yeah, in Czech Republic. So this is just now in my head. I can't really describe the situation in Colombia concerning the schools, as I don't really know. So I will really give the time to the Latin American colleagues.
Okay. Okay. So Rodrigo, go ahead if you would like to add about Chile,
okay.
please.
Okay. Thank you, Orlando. Here, physical education were done in 3 ways. The first was, or is doing is Zoom classes, like online classes. The physical educator is online with their children, like our meeting now. It is synchronic. This is one way. The other one is not synchronic, and it's through video classes. One physical educator grabar.
Register to
register or record some exercises, and students go to YouTube and put the class where their teacher put to this group. And the other one, and it probably related with what Nemesia said, children with less economical position, they only are or have been doing reading work related with physical education. I think the next first semester is probably will be the same, just with private schools, I think, and with the groups that can create these bubbles that Nemesia said. Probably they will do physical education, but as in many countries, I think this is a discussion that is doing now. We don't have any information about what would happen with physical education, but I guess that from here or this year, that here in Chile finish in December. I think we are doing physical education classes like those three kind of classes: synchronic or online, asynchronic, and many children just are reading about physical education, or practicing with their families, or just joking with their brothers and sisters. Yeah, but I think until December we will be in these three ways of physical education.
Thank you very much. Don't have any more questions here in the chat box. It has been a great experience to share with you all. There are more stories that can be told. I know that there are different realities in different places, but of course time is short and we're out of respect. So I appreciate the chance that was given to me. Thank you, Rodrigo, Miguel, and ALESDE friends and ISSA friends. Thank you for allowing me to share with Rolando this panel, with moderating this panel. So it was my pleasure. Thank you very much. Rolando, please.
Yeah, the same thing. Thank you also for all the organizers, for ISSA, for all the people in ALESDE also, that they've been doing a wonderful effort. And hope to see you next year, everybody in Chile, if in this post-COVID world. I mean, yeah, we'll be glad to meet you all. I mean, like, and I'm sure that Miguel will host a splendid Congress in next year in Chile. So let's see how it goes. And also thank you for all the presentators, because I think these exchanges help a lot, not only to have a more accurate perspective of how the Latin American realities are, but also so the people in other parts of the world can know and get to know a little bit of how it all works in this area of the world. So thank you, everybody. Thank you all the people that are writing us. I mean, I see Pinar from Turkey, Gerardo Orellana from Mexico, and different, I mean, colleagues and friends that we have met in different congresses. So I mean, again, hope to see you everybody in Chile next year.
We hope so.
Au revoir,
Thank you very much
for participating.
Thank you, Christine.
Thank you, Christine.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christine.
Thank you very much. Hope to see you there in Chile.
Yeah. See you.
See you.
Thank you.
Good
Thank
night.
you very much for all.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
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 Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.